In the second book of Corinthians, chapter 12, verse 7, the Bible talks of Paul having received a thorn in the flesh. A number of people have used that phrase, thorn in the flesh, to excuse their behavior that is unbecoming or even a sin in their life, so that somebody is given to fits of anger and they say, this is my thorn in the flesh. Others will say, my thorn in the flesh is that I can't help myself but tell lies. Is that how we are supposed to understand it? Welcome to CITAM ChurchOnline. This is Karita Mbagara, the Deputy Bishop of Christ is the Answer Ministries. When Paul was speaking about the thorn in the flesh, he tells us it is because of the many revelations that God had given him. And to keep him from being conceited, he was allowed, or it was allowed, that he would have this messenger of Satan coming to buffet him. Now, the question that we need to ask those people who are excusing their sin is it because they have many revelations that they are getting angry? Is it because they have many revelations that they are able to lie? Or is it that by getting, by being angry or being a liar, you're getting many revelations so that we can, say that that is your thorn in the flesh? Don't you realize what the Bible actually says? That Paul was given this thorn in the flesh to keep him from sin. The sin of being conceited, the sin of being proud. Is that your parallel? Is that what is happening in your life? I highly doubt it. And consequently, we cannot take the thorn in the flesh to be a behavior malady or a failure in your character. You cannot take a failure in your character to be the thorn in the flesh. The thorn in the flesh, in my understanding, is called a messenger of Satan. So my take is that it is actually a personality that was allowed to bring hardship, or Paul says because of it, later he says because of it, there was hardship in his life. There were weaknesses that came his way, and he had difficulties and challenges in his ministry. Further, the term thorn is used many times in the Old Testament. For example, in the book of Judges chapter 2 verse 3, and it refers to the enemies of Israel. And also in the book of Numbers 33 verse 55, we find the same term, meaning that it was enemies of God's people. Just like for Paul, it was an enemy of God, or an enemy of Paul, that was allowed to come into his life and to affect the way he was living. And Paul says that the result of this was that, maybe we should read it. In verse 8, he tells us that 3 times he pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But God said, my grace is sufficient for you. And if we jump to verse 10, the Bible tells us, or Paul tells us, that is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardship, in persecution, in difficulties, for when I am weak, then I am strong. In other words, this thorn in the flesh was causing weaknesses to arise in the life of Paul, was causing difficulties and persecution. And what is he saying when he says that there were weaknesses in his life? I think he is speaking, when he uses the term weaknesses, he is using it maybe echoically. What do I mean by that? That he is echoing what the Corinthians were saying about Paul. That Paul is a weak guy, or Paul is not a very knowledgeable person. And it is in Corinth that there was an argument that resulted in division between those who were going to be followers of Paul, those who are going to be followers of Peter, those who are going to be followers of Apollos. And it is possible that some of them were saying, you know, Paul is weak. And why were they saying he is weak? Because there were certain things that he was suffering because of the thorn in the flesh. Paul is echoing what the Corinthians were saying, that he is weak. But he was saying, in my weakness, or when I am weak, then I am strong. Meaning, when you think because of my faith, my following God, because of my persecutions and difficulties, that I am weak, well, I embrace it, because then I am strong. Let me help you to understand this by an illustration. When we become Christians, there are people who think that we have become weak. Because we are forgiving and not retaliating, there are people who will think that you have become weak. I remember somebody who told me when I became a Christian that he considers me like a person who drinks alcohol, who has become lost, or somebody that is given to smoking of bhang. In other words, my Christianity was considered a liability, and it was not valued. But if that was the case, then I could have joined, and I do join Paul in saying, then I am glad to be weak in that sense, because then I am strong in the Lord. Weak as far as the culture is concerned, weak as far as the world is concerned, but strong as far as God is concerned. My brothers and sisters, I want to ask you, if God has allowed a thorn in the flesh, in your flesh, then surrender to Him. Submit like Paul. And also, don't be deceived to thinking that God is excusing sin and that is what is the thorn in the flesh. The thorn in the flesh may be you being rejected by family, you being rejected by your friends. But if that is the thorn because of your faith, then look to God and He will help you. Don't become like a story I read of an accountant in London. It was reported by Reuters of a 63-year-old accountant in London who was very fearful of hospital and doctors. And so he refused to go to hospital although he had pain. It is said that actually he was suffering from bladder, a bladder problem. And what he did was to actually, in his own house, to operate himself. Obviously, the story ends in that he died. He killed himself because he was too fearful to trust the doctor. There are many that fear to go to God. They can't trust God. And because of that, they try to help themselves. They go on a self-help project and they end up killing themselves. Don't become one of those that will destroy themselves because they have refused to turn to God. God is waiting to help you with the true thorn in the flesh that may be in your life. And you will find, like Paul says, that the grace of God is sufficient. It is not that you are supernatural, but that God gives you an empowering so that you are able to do what the world is unable to do. And you will be victorious and ever praising God for His goodness. If this is a blessing to you, please share it. And if you have not yet subscribed, please subscribe so that whenever we put up videos, you can be notified and we can be blessed together. You could also leave a comment to tell me what you think about what I have shared, and the Lord will bless us as we continue in fellowship together. Thank you very much.